What is poppin', people? We're back, and whew, big thing has happened. I guess normally I'd have another tab pulled up, and I just got home though, and I wanted to cover this now before I forget to do this until the. Anyhow, so big thing has happened. I'm gonna just do this. This item, like clay, has been banned from RU. What does that mean? Well, it also means, because of ban transitivity, that it was banned from NU. And wow, that is a huge that is a huge shift for the tier. So, the reasoning behind this banning, right? What just oh, my Minecraft crashed. Sorry for getting distracted there, but so RU banned light clay for what I can figure based on like their MP thread and some posts in the policy review section, because hyper offense in specific dual screens teams, of course, had gotten to be kind of ludicrous. Now, normally what would be done, right, is you would just ban the abusers, the setup sweepers. You know, things like Lanoon, Poltegeist, what are some other ones that are really prominent? Necrozma. I think even Reggie Drago was pretty commonplace, at least on some variants of those teams. Normally you would ban those. You know, you'd single out the most oppressive of them, you'd say, okay, get rid of these, and then by doing so, those kinds of teams would no longer be as overbearing, because the mods that they enabled to the most obscene of degrees would be gone. The problem was, though, is that RU had so many. There were so many just ludicrously good sweepers. And I believe also just a lot of variations of those teams. It wasn't like there was a, you know, formulaic way that these teams necessarily appeared outside of, here's some sweepers, here are the screen setters. They had like 5 different viable screen setters, Virizion, Frostlass, I don't know the other ones because I don't play RE, but those two got some usage. And it just a plethora of super great setup sweepers. And as a result, they were like, okay, there's no easy way to fix this other than a light clay ban. They decided that would be the most straightforward way of handling this. And obviously that carries down to us. And so, an archetype that was reasonably, like, I want to say balanced as now, or as of now, gets, like, gutted. Now, why do I say balanced? Well, I do think that dual screens teams in NU were really strong, right? Xatu was an incredible setter of screens, and you also had some, like, fringe, like, double screens teams you'd see, like, with a Frostlass as an alternative setup Pokemon for him. The big thing, I think, for NU hyper offense was that it had never been super fleshed out, I think, because most of the teams were really, really similar. There, for a while, hadn't been much variation in them until in UPL, over which we have seen not like dominance of such teams, but we've seen a lot of variety in how they can look. We've seen, again, like multiple screen setters. We've seen the rise of Pokemon like Kingdra over Blastoise. We've just seen a lot of different setup supers getting experimented with. And the reason I don't think that these teams were too overbearing in NU mostly just boils down to the fact that NU's setup sweepers are a lot more tame. That's not to say they aren't nutty, right, under certain circumstances. People have voiced issues with Blastoise plenty of times before. I think Agility Focus Energy Kingdra was really nutty as well. Nasty Plot Salazzle really good. Nasty Plot Celebi is surged in usage and did see a place on some teams. You got things like Dragon Dance Flygon, which I think was even good in RU as well. But that's an option down here. We even saw some Pokemon like Turtonator get a usage. You know, similar to Blastoise, has some interesting defensive merit on those teams. With Light Clay gone, I'm unsure what dual screens looks like, because here's the thing. I think so when you look at NU, right, and the most common dual screen setters, the two that come to mind are probably Espeon and Xatu, just because of Magic Bounce, really. You know, that Magic Bounce is amazing on the super hard offense teams because you can just deny so much momentum from your opponent. You give yourself a way to prevent, like, status moves from affecting you. Stealth Rock, Spikes, those get just bounced back. So you saw a lot of those. And I mean, again, Frostlass we've seen just because Taunt is really good. I I still think dual screens probably sees some use. I think Espeon falls out of favor entirely, though. So, Espeon's big thing with those teams was it run dual screens and it, like, yawn Dazzling Gleam. And with Light Clay, Espeon could waste a good amount of turns just kind of sitting in front of your opponent, spamming yawn and looking to get, like, a good switch in to one of its setup sweepers against a Mon that, you know, didn't want to have to be out. Because no, people don't want to have to sack a Mon to sleep. But the big thing now, Espeon can't do that. And so, I think it falls out of favor pretty hard. The reason I still think dual screens will retain some viability, though, is Xatu. And the big reason for that is because Xatu's got Teleport. And we all know what Teleport does at this point. We've seen plenty of Future Sight Teleport shenanigans in OU. But what's really nice for Xatu is what it lets it do. Giving a Mon what is essentially a free switch-in guaranteed because of the slow pivot is really still valuable. And so long as Xatu can set those screens that one time, you should be able to get something in for free, right? You know, you won't have a whole bunch of turns left, maybe like 2 turns total of both screens being up. But for some sweepers like, say, Kingdra or Shell Smash Blastoise, that's all you need. And so while I do think that dual screens teams take a heavy hit, I think we could probably still see a fair amount of viability out of those teams. And yes, good work, Turtle Doggo. You're at the top peak for Indulator right now. But I do think we should still see dual screens. I'm still a little bit annoyed by the fact that this ban affects NU because those teams weren't really a problem. I was reading through the policy review thread, and Fidge, I'm gonna call you out here because you're my friend, but I disagreed with your take on this. I think the argument that as dual screens gets optimized in NU, it would be a problem is a little bit of a reach. I don't like to make these kinds of like rash assumptions. Mostly because I think trying to imagine a future meta is always awful. Like, obviously, as a meta develops, you'll see optimization of certain archetypes, right? I mean, you could think of like Gen 7 NU Stall, for instance, right? At this point, that's a pretty optimized team. You'll see like Palisand, Pikabaku, Articuno, Xatu, Mega Audino. What's the last? Like a Golbat. Something like that's pretty standard affair. So that's an example of an optimization, right? Where you see one archetype is being consistently brought in the same manner. Like, hell, even go up to Gen 7 UU Stall. Piff has a lot of variations of Stall, but at the end of the day, there's still some, like, pretty consistent factors behind it. If you look at the sample teams for that, you can see what I mean there. But I think to just assume that it would become overbearing, like, maybe. It's an offense build, right? So, like, when Hail became optimized, which I think we pretty much settled on, like, Decidueye, Dragalge, Arctivish, Vanillix, Aurorus, Alolan Sandslash is, like, the de facto Hail build. Pretty overbearing. I don't know if I'm willing to give the same amount of credit, I guess I should say, to dual screens. I do think that the rise of Kingdra, especially as an alternative to Blastoise, was a big thing, causing maybe some people to turn their heads, and even just, again, Blastoise as a whole. People already were pretty annoyed with that on dual screens, and as dual screens got more, you know, varied, more and more annoying. What I'm saying here is, I'm a little bothered that this ban has to affect us. But as I've said plenty of times in the past with bans, am I gonna complain? Hell no. One less matchup fish? Look, all that means is I can bring electric terrain more and more now. This will be the matchup fish archetype now. Well, again, let's be real here. As one team fades out of favor, another is going to pop up in its place. I envision dual screens will still maintain some place in the metagame, just because I think Teleport Xatu is a really strong enabler for the archetype. But I imagine other offense builds will get more experimenting with. Manual Weather seems to be pretty out of favor at this point. People, you know, Manual Sun, I mean, I saw Hoenn confirmed laddering with that, and it didn't look too good. Manual Hail is pretty unviable from what we've seen. It's like one of those things that you can bring, but eh. We've seen some terrain. I mean, again, Joey and I laddered with that to some pretty decent success. Partly because we didn't queue into a single Flygon, but that's beyond the point. That's beside the point. And, I mean, side terrain, similar to E-terrain, it's like not really seen, but it's still viable enough. I don't know. Some new offense build, though, will rise to the forefront. Maybe just a different variation of HO, even, that we haven't really seen much of. I'd say Spike Stack HO, but this is Heavy Duty Boots generation. I'm not running Spike Stack. I don't care how many knockoff Pokemon you have, this shit's not gonna work! Playing a little bit there, but you get the idea. I think that's really about all I have to say, though, with the meta. In terms of certain Pokemon falling off, we did cover Espeon. I think Xatu still is going to be really good. Mostly because people have just been using standard pivot Xatu more anyway. It's decent enough at deterring Copperajah, and obviously just having Magic Bounce on your team is really powerful. Even if you don't necessarily like want to switch him on, like say, in Xatu's case, Diancie. You know, Diamond Storm does a whole bunch, and if it gets enough defense boost, it can even break you with Body Press. Just having, you know, Magic Bounce is a really powerful ability. I think Xatu still maintains a good spot. I do think some of the setup sweepers fall off at least a little bit. Things like Kingdra and Salazzle will always be really good. I think people might get a little bit less bothered by Blastoise at least now. From what I had seen, a lot of people were mostly bothered by the fact that dual screens made it impossible to revenge kill as well. Maybe without screens, people are a little bit less worried about its spot in the meta? Obviously, we'll have to still see how that shakes out. But that's my, like, immediate gut reaction. But I am interested to see how this will go. Yeah, wow, that's not a sentence. I'm interested to see how this will affect you going forward. Don't expect too much change, but it should make building at least a little bit easier, just because, you know, there's one less super snowball-y archetype that runs the tier. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll probably get out some laddering again soon, because, hey, gotta ladder. Gotta get top tier Gamer 69 to the top, gotta, you know, knock some of these NT people down out of their golden thrones. But until then, I hope you guys are enjoying life. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.